All right, real excited to have the guest on in the Sports Card Nation guest line that I have. He's doing some big things, and he's doing some big things with kids in mind, and that's really important to me as someone who got started in the hobby as a 7-year-old kid many moons ago. Scary to say, but it is what it is. But I'm happy to be joined by Nick Barton, MeanDaddy Cards. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me, John. Appreciate it. Looking forward to hanging out.
Yeah, again, thank you. I know you're a busy guy and making some time for us, and another thank you too. I know you served this country in the military, so thank you for your service there as well.
Hey, thank you for your support. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So anytime someone first comes on the show, and I have people back on, but the first time anyone's on, it's kind of our standard startup podcast question, like when and how did the hobby start for you?
All right, that's a great question. Yeah, so I started out as a collector really young, probably like 4 or 5. My grandfather was big into collecting, as was his father, my great grandfather. So my grandfather used to bring me like, yeah, I don't know if you remember Kmart or if there was a Kmart in your area, but there was a Kmart near our house. My grandfather used to get blaster boxes from Kmart once in a while and bring them over, and I always loved opening them, and I loved looking for like Phillies players, Eagles players that we watched together on TV, and that was one of the many things we bonded over. And then he started passing some stuff down to me. I have like a autographed football by the first Eagles team to ever go to a Super Bowl. I have a Peyton Manning football, I think's behind me here, from his draft days. Just stuff like that was really special, and not only cemented that bond with my grandfather, but also just my love for collecting and the hobby and sports, and that's how I got started.
Yeah, and I love that. For me, it was my grandfather as well. I'm a New York City kid originally, now in Syracuse, and going to that corner store. And like you, I was a sports kid, and so I knew about sports. And then I learned, like, hey, they make these athletes and players on cardboard and cards, and the rest is history. As a 7-year-old kid in 1979, with 1979 Tops pack. I think the fourth or fifth card in was a Reggie, and the rest is history. And so, I love those family bonds and the nostalgia aspect of it. I know you have two young kids of your own. Are they old enough to participate in the hobby at this point?
Yeah, so my son's 4, and he started out with Pokemon. So I'm learning. Well, I guess relearning. I collected them when I was a kid too, because I was a kid in the '90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Um, so I collected them, and now I'm getting to do it again with him, which is really awesome because I get to see the joy in his face. He loves opening packs, and he's funny. He loves to chase Charmander and Charizard. Those are his two favorites. So it's a lot of fun just getting to see him kind of live that, and I'm getting to live it now as the father. I already lived it as a kid, obviously, and then my daughter is 9 months old. So she's not quite ready yet, but she does like to chew on cards occasionally, so she can get her hand on
Yeah, my dog likes to do that. My son's 26, so he doesn't do that anymore. But no, that's funny. But yeah, and I again, those stories of sharing the hobby with loved ones, whether it be sons or daughters, or, grandsons, uncles. It really, maybe stories are similar, but they're not always exactly alike. So you can correct me if you're wrong. I know you kind of touched on it already. Kind of when you started, when you were a kid, you were pretty much like heavy into like the local, like your Philly heroes.
Yep, yeah,
Did
I
anyone?
always oh, sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I always yeah, I always collected like local Philly guys. I actually so my grandfather's is kind of like I guess bad from a kid from Philly, but like my grandfather loved Derek Jeter. So I grew up loving to watch Derek Jeter. Just him and Chase Utley were my two favorite baseball players, and I loved how hard they played. They never took a day off. They played every game. They put their bodies in the line. I loved how they played the game, and I always tried to emulate that as a kid, and for as long as I could play sports. Obviously, I was not a pro athlete, so didn't quite make it there. But yeah, I used to collect like Jeter cards. Mickey Morandini was one of our favorite players. I love Brian Dawkins. Yeah, so a lot of Philly heavy players. With a couple other guys mixed in that we love to watch, whether they were, a lot of them just hard nosed guys, not necessarily Hall of Famers, but
Yeah, I think it shows, probably a little bit of your own personal work ethic that you gravitate towards guys like that who, hustle, play in, play out, don't take days off, maybe even play hurt, where others wouldn't. Right? I feel that I'm like that myself, and it's a different era now, right? Especially when we look at like the NBA with load management, and I think with like someone buying tickets, a dad buying tickets, let's say, to take his son to a Lakers game to see like LeBron before he retires here, and he took a night off, right? And for what that night might cost with tickets and travel and all that goes along with it, right? We didn't have to worry too much during our era, even though I'm a little older than you. But even during your era, coming after mine, right? These guys, a lot of them or most of them, played as long as as long as they could get on the field or the court. They played, and that era is sort of getting that era and that mentality is sort of kind of we're seeing less of it in today's day and age. It is what it is, but I appreciate kind of the era I grew up with, where that wasn't so much the case as we see it now. So I get the Jeter thing, even like you said, being a Philly guy, and even me being a New York City kid. I had players that weren't Mets or Yankees, let's say, that I was fans of. Even growing up, like a guy like Ken Griffey Jr. was a guy I followed a lot. Just not necessarily a Mariners fan, but just a guy would run through a wall, play defense, and could hit, right.
yep,
Five tool, could run, especially pre injuries, and just had fun playing the game, right? Hat backwards, blowing bubble gum bubbles, and just you could tell like he probably would have did it for free if there wasn't a paycheck involved. And as we both know, played during an era where steroids and performance enhancing drugs became an issue, but yet his name was never mentioned. He was never in any allegations. And when you look up his numbers, Nick, for what he did during that era, uh, all natural, like even all the more impressive to
yeah.
me. So to this day, like even as a show dealer, I always try to pick up Griffey cards to have available. I think he's one of those guys that still transcends. Like can go from one era to the next, and even kids today, even though most of them still know who Ken Griffey Jr. is, even though they may not have been alive during his active years. So um, I appreciate guys like that. So I get it. You can go off your favorite team if you admire a player for whatever reason. I kind of mentioned Griffey, but for there's really no wrong reason if it moves your meter. So I get that. To talk about the nostalgia factory, right? You talked about with your your grandfather, and now with your own kids, and doing shows, right? We'll get into that even a little bit more, but um sometimes I think the older folks in the hobby, we most likely were introduced to the hobby by someone older, whether it be a relative, a friend, whatever the case may be. And I still think that happens. I don't think that's a lost art, but I think it's less prevalent now because of maybe some dollar signs and maybe people in it for different reasons. But I love that nostalgia part of the hobby where, I remember 1979 and those first three packs of 79 baseball. Kind of talk about with your own family, and then now as a dad yourself, the importance of that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that actually, I want to say one thing first. You mentioned
Yep.
Griffey. Just to touch back on that real quick, like obviously I grew up in Philly, and you know what? We were all still running around with our hats on backwards, trying to emulate his beautiful, perfect swing, and blowing bubble. Like he affected kids across the country,
Yep.
and I think that ties in with the nostalgia and some of these guys. All those guys are my age now, and you know we have kids, and they have their favorite players and stuff like that. But I think that it's really cool how people don't realize that these athletes can really change people's lives. Um, and then as far as the nostalgia with the collecting goes, I mean that's one of the big reasons I started this. I've always loved collecting. I knew that when obviously my son's older than my daughter, when my son got old enough, hopefully he'd like it too, and I would introduce him to that. But I also had a lot of other friends and people that are my age that are having kids, some neighbors, and their kids were interested in Pokemon or whatever. And some people collected as a kid and stopped. Some people opened Pokemon cards when they were a kid and then never touched them again. Mom threw them out or whatever. Um, and I was getting a lot of questions because people knew that I've always collected and stuff like that. And the first thing you do if you go on Instagram and Google, sports cards or card collecting, you're going to see $20,000 deals, $40,000 deals, and the average person is going to look at that and say, "Yeah, this isn't for me. I can't find it. Like I don't have that kind of extra money laying around." And that's just not the case in my opinion. You don't have to. There's. I don't even do that. Like that's not my lane. I like to collect guys that I like and like for example, I love Stadium Club. I think they're some of the best looking baseball cards. And I know they're not worth the most, but I don't care. Like I think the photography is great, and
Yep. You
um,
you we're really cut from the same cloth. Not to cut you off, Nick. Like
sure.
Stadium Club's one of my favorite brands of all time too. Just like you said, with the photography and the gloss, and it just much like the name implies, right? Stadium Club. You feel like with that photography, you feel like you're at the game with a lot of the action shots and the close ups and that sort of thing. So yeah, I echo that Stadium Club sentiment. But sorry to cut you off, but I definitely wanted to wave that pennant too with you.
No, I'm glad there's other stadium clubbers out there. There's nothing like hitting like a members only or something. They're so fun to hit.
Yeah, first
It's
day issues, like
Yep.
it's well put, and I'm glad it's still around, right? In the time where we're seeing some brands, be discontinued, and now with the licensing and all that, Stadium Club has kind of stood the test of time, and I'm glad to see. And they've made some minor changes with it, Nick, but it's really pretty similar to the Stadium Club we grew up on.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that particular like set. I really love everything about it. And some of the photography is amazing. Like the specifically one of the newer ones people might have seen is the Vladdy Guerrero Jr. with the Toronto like Space Needle in the background.
Yeah,
That's cool. There's so many cool ones with that. But yeah, I mean a lot. Like I said, I grew up to it never had anything to do with the value of the cards. Like I wanted to collect players that I liked, and like half time I didn't even know if it was a rookie card or like I was just excited if I got a Mickey Morandini card or whatever. Um, and I want people to be able to experience that, both parents and children, and I don't want people to be discouraged because they feel like they can't afford it. And that's like I said, that's one of the big reasons why I started MeanDaddy Cards. I just figured it could be a good place to hopefully encourage others to kind of join this awesome community that has done a lot for me in my life, to be completely honest. And yeah, I wanted to let people know and have a place to go to when they go out on Instagram or whatever to see that like you can go to a card show for. I mean, if you we give away a lot of tickets to card shows. Like sometimes you can go for free. Um, and then you can take a $20 bill to a card show and have a blast hunting value bins and stuff like that. And
yeah,
it's not about the monetary value of the card. Find people that you and your child like to watch on TV in real life. Or maybe someone that was special to you growing up as a kid, like a Ken Griffey Jr. And that could be the way that you introduce your child to who Ken Griffey Jr. is. There's endless possibilities with that.
Yeah, no doubt, and what very well said, Nick, too, right? For every expensive Ken Griffey Jr. card, and there are expensive Kendrick, and I'm using him as example because we're both talking about him.
Sure.
You can buy Ken Griffey Jr. cards for $1. They're Ken Griffey Jr. cards, as you just said, in value boxes, in dollar boxes. So, not every Ken Griffey Jr. card is unobtainable, and you can get even everyone thinks about the '89 Upper Deck, right? His '89 Fleer, his '89 Donruss Rated Rookie can be had for between $3 and $7 at some shows. So even a young kid who getting into Griffey or learning about him or through a relative or a friend that's let them know about him, even they could still get a rookie card in this particular case with this particular athlete. So there is ways to, I know that's a big topic in the hobby that, the pricing and what things are going for are sort of pricing kids out of the hobby. Now I agree it doesn't I think there's some truth to that, but still, if a kid really wants to enjoy the hobby, there's ways to do it. Much like you said, bargain bins, dollar bins. I know myself as a dealer, Nick. I usually have free packs with me at every show. A kid comes up to my table. I try to give them a free pack when I have them available, and so there's always and I hope it never happens. But the hobby, I think, can be enjoyed by everyone. There's just different ways to do it. Kind of touch. I know you talked a little bit about it already with the bargain boxes and things. But as a dad, like you said, a 9-year-old and doing shows, what are ways where a kid can still participate, be active in the hobby, and does and we talk about those 5-figure deals and 6-figure deals, and people like to talk about them, but like you said earlier, it's really a small percentage of the overall hobby, right? It might make more news and more noise in the kitchen, but it's probably 10% of the hobby, maybe even less. We just hear about it a lot. So for someone like yourself, that as a dealer, as a dad of a kid that collects, if someone asked you, hey, what advice would you give more for my son or daughter to still participate in the hobby? We don't have a ton of discretionary income. So how can we do it? Like how would you answer the question? I know we mentioned bins and stuff like that, but even in addition to that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways. One of the things you mentioned as a vendor, I do the same thing. I have packs that I give away for free when I can. I started to give away like just individual cards to people as the kids as they come up, especially if it's like their first card show, whatever. And the hobby community, some people have been by my table or at my table to overhear that, and I've had people just donate cards and say, "Hey, give this to the next kid that comes up." And I literally now have a huge stack of cards, and when kids come up, I say, "Hey, what team do you like?" Or take a look at these cards and pick a card so you can remember your first show, stuff like that. I think that all of us as a whole can help these kids and give cards to them just to help start their collection. The value bins obviously are a good option. One thing I would tell parents specifically is, when kids are getting it, don't make it be about value. Make it be about the card. I like the photography. I like the special jersey they're wearing. They're wearing a City Connect jersey instead of a regular one or whatever. Um, find cards that are in your budget, but also meaningful and maybe even rare, because there are rare cards that are not that expensive of players, great players and not so great players. And really, like the hunt to me is fun. It really means a lot more when like you really had to put in a lot of work to track down a certain card at a certain price, and you go and get it. And I would also say don't worry about grading. Um, Obviously a PSA 10 is worth more than non anything else pretty much aside from like a black label. Um, but I don't like you don't have to get pristine like just because somebody says this card's pristine doesn't mean that that's gospel or that's law. You know what I mean? Um, So I think like those things are definitely a good way. I think that the one thing where people that say kids are getting priced out is tough, is with just the prices of the car, like the packs on open sealed wax. Um, and but part of that is too is that they do make sets that are cheaper to acquire, like Score Football, for example. Um, so it just depends. I mean, I think if you make it less about what the value of the cards are and more about the player or some special reason that, like some cards have celebrities in the backgrounds of the pictures and stands or whatever. So, just find something that's meaningful. And if you collect things that are meaningful, you'll never get tired of them and you don't have to worry about what the value is because they mean something to you.
Yeah, no doubt, and well said. And even hearing you talk about that, I've done that too, right? Or a kid will come with a parent, and they're looking, and I'll be like, who are you looking for anything in particular? And the kid might, hey, my favorite player, so and so, and I'll find a card somewhere in my inventory and hand it to them. And sometimes it'd be like, "How much is it?" And I'll be like, "No, that's my gift to you today, and enjoy the hobby and that sort of thing." And it doesn't look I know I'm preaching to the choir here, Nick. It doesn't obviously hurt me, and that could be the difference. Not to be dramatic, but those kind of moments can be the difference whether that young person like stays in the hobby or doesn't, right? And pays it forward as they get older and stay in the hobby and have more discretionary income as they get older, and they can pay that forward as well. I love to do that as much as I can. Um, I think we're seeing more of that. I think some of that is contagious. Another point you made, which I think is a good one, I think it's on the card manufacturers, and especially Tops and Fanatics now with holding three of the four major sport license, right? To still make products that are affordable to the younger collectors that may not have the money of an older person who has a job and even even those folks are having sometimes purchasing some of these wax products as they go past four figures or even in some cases five figures with some of your higher brands like Transcendent and
Yeah.
those sort of things. So I hope they keep making those products where kids not only making them though, Nick, too, is making sure that they're not going to that secondary as much as they can control that, not going to that secondary market and keeping them affordable even on that level. Almost like SRP, and really we don't want to see this selling for more than this. And you know, I know breaking's a big thing in the industry. I've said it numerous times for many years, right? It's probably saved the wax industry for there was a point where wax was not selling like we know it today, and some things were collecting dust. Those that doesn't even occur anymore because anyone will people buying the breaks for bowling cards or cornhole, like nothing doesn't like really not sell as long as the price point makes sense. So, I like to see even maybe more breaks. I know some people might say this is sacrilegious, but really cheap ones where a kid can sort of get that same, adrenaline rush and not break the bank. But again, nothing beats opening the pack right yourself and seeing those cards in your own hand. I don't think anything will replicate that. So I think some of that, as you pointed out, is on the card manufacturers to try to maintain that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I agree with it about like just having the cards. There's something having the cards in your hand, opening the packs. I remember doing it as a kid, even with like buddies. We'd get a couple dollars, get in a ride to the local card shop and get a couple packs, and that was always a blast. I think that's an important thing. Go to your local card shops and see. Just talk to the guys that are in there, and look. Most card shops have dollar boxes in there as well as sealed wax from every level and price point pretty much. And you can get what works for you and get to open some packs. I mean, the joy of opening a pack is up there for me for sure.
Yeah, I've said it. You know, to me, it's how I got started. Again, 1979 with 379 tops baseball packs, and right, just never knowing what might come out of that pack. And listen, I'm old enough where I started when there was no parallels and colored cards and beam teams and kabooms and downtowns. Right, it was
Yeah.
just base cards and rookie cards. And growing up in New York at that time, Reggie Jackson was like the toast in New York, Mr. October. And, pulling that card in the first pack, like the fourth or fifth card in, and I was hooked. The rest is the history. Every if I got any allowance I got, I went to that store and bought those packs. And there's something to be said too. Yeah, you can buy stuff online. You never have to leave your house. There's eBay and other selling platforms, but nothing can replace the in per. I always say this, and I think you'll agree, Nick. Nothing can replace that in-person transaction, whether that be at an LCS or a card show, right? Where you have those conversations, where you can learn something from somebody. And that's both ways. I learned stuff from somebody, and then I maybe be able to teach someone something that they didn't know, right? And we're always learning, right? And I don't care how long you've been in the hobby, and in my case, it's over 40 years. I learned something about the hobby every day. And much like you said, I don't deal in Pokemon cards, but just from being at the shows and talking to the kids, and not even just kids, but even older people, I've learned a lot about Pokemon cards. I'm nowhere as knowledgeable as people who collect them, but I know more today than I did 2, 3 years ago or further back. So, you don't get that, but at home behind a computer necessarily. There's something about that in person, right? And if you're buying a card, right, seeing it right there in front of you to look at it and not looking at a picture on the screen and hope that's the same card you get, and there's no funny business going on. So nothing will, to me, nothing will ever replace. If I have a choice of buying the same card or opening the same pack, you know, in person or online, it's going to be in person all the time, right? You can't replace those social interactions and in person, socialization. And I think it's important that we don't lose sight of that. Maybe I'm the old man on the porch because that's all we had when I started. There was no internet in 1979, and obviously no social media and no online platforms like we see today. And I'm glad I kind of got my. I appreciate what we have now, but I'm glad that I didn't start in there because I think you appreciate it more because of that. So, I mean, as a show guy and talk about sort of that in person versus kind of much of what I just talked about, touched on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so many things there. I got to catch the tail end of the no internet era, obviously the 90s and stuff like that. So I have some memory of it. But no, nothing beats the in-person. Like that, the community is part of this, right? Getting to meet new people. I mean, I've met so many awesome people just like that were randomly assigned a table next to me, and we just hit it off, started talking, and that's been amazing. Um, we had a guy that we gave. He won one of our contests for giving away tickets to a show, and he ended up coming to the show and coming up to my table, and we were talking. He said, "Yeah, I've always wanted to come to a show, but this many people are, I feel overwhelmed and anxious. But I figured that like, hey, I got these tickets for free. Like, let me go try it out. And if I don't like it, and nothing lost." And he's like, "I'm having the best time. Like, this is going to be something that I do regularly now." And that to me, that's so important. I never want to be the reason that any person, a kid or an adult, says, "You know what? That guy was a bad experience, and I never want to come to a card show again." I want to be the complete opposite of that. I want people to have a good time and enjoy it and see that there are good people. There's plenty of good people in the hobby and everywhere, right? There's good and bad people everywhere. But I want to try to be someone that, you know, props up the hobby in this community and wants more people to join it, feel welcomed, and enjoy the ride that it is.
Yeah, well said, and I agree. And there is just some right being, and it does. It's not even just applies to the hobby, Nick, but no matter what different hobbies you're in, or even in work forces, right? Being in the room with people who kind of share the same passions or likes that you have, right? It's you feel like you're in the same fraternity. You can't get that when you're in. You can a little bit. I don't want to fully throw it out there, out, but being in that same room at a card show, being in that LCS with fellow customers and the proprietor, right? And I always talk about LCSs are like so important. And I had one myself for 7 years in the '90s, right? And most LCS owners care about customer service. They care about what their customers collect or what they're looking for, right? And most would once they get to know like you, and they know, hey, he collects, Bryce Harper cards. Um, you know, they'll put stuff away. They'll when you come in, they'll remember, hey, I got these in, or hey, I got this. I picked it up in a bigger deal. I'm giving it to you. Merry Christmas early or whatever. I thought of you when I got this in a collection that I acquired, and I put it aside for you, right? And that sort of stuff goes a long way, right? To those experiences being positive, where someone gets to enjoy the hobby, stay in it. And I when people get in the hobby, someone say, "Oh man, like the old guard." I've been called like the old guard. Like you don't like new people. I love new people. But I want people not to come in the hobby and stay in the hobby, and not maybe leave after a year or a couple years. And so, anything we can do, I always say we're all whether we want to be or not, if we're in the hobby, we're sort of ambassadors and advocates for the hobby. And so anything you can do, and you don't have to be a show dealer or an LCS owner. You can do things to promote the hobby and do good things to have other people have good hobby experiences and stick around. And I think we're seeing. I think that stuff's contagious, Nick, and I think we're starting to see more. But there's always room for even more, right? There can't when it comes to that positive stuff, we can't have uh, too much, right? So the more we see it, I just think it makes the hobby a better place.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Just the relationships, like you mentioned, what that triggered in me is I have a really close friend. We met in the army. I'm out now. He's still in. He's finishing up his 20 years and then retiring. So he's out in Colorado, but he's from Seattle, so he's a big Griffey fan. Obviously, he grew up there.
Yeah,
He grew up in Oregon, but he's a Seattle fan. Um, so whenever I come across like cool Seahawks cards or Mariners cards, I pick them up for him. He does the same thing for me with Phillies and Eagles stuff. And we every once in a
yeah,
while, there's a package on the doorstep with cards, and it's a fun bond to not only look for cards for you, but for other people that you're close with and that you can share those memories with. Um, yeah, it's just awesome. I mean, that's part of the in person, getting to know people thing and sharing the experiences of the hobby with them. It's all tied together. And as you mentioned too, like everybody really is an ambassador for the hobby at this point. And it's up to us. Like if we want this hobby to continue to grow and sustain itself, and for future generations to be able to continue to enjoy it, we have to shepherd it properly. And
yeah.
it starts with
I
everybody.
Yep, yep. And you never know. I always, when I started doing show, I did my first show as a dealer at 15 years old. I was
Wow.
probably on the young side of things, and I always say this to like people I set up near or I know that are fellow dealers. And this doesn't just apply to dealers, Nick. This applies to anyone. You never know who's watching, and so you should always be cognizant of that. And so, whether I'm home by myself working with cards or I'm at behind my table at a show where there's 900 people in the room, I try to, have integrity no matter what, whether it's no one's watching or everyone's watching. And there's something to be said about that. And so, and I take pride in that. So, whether it's like I mentioned, maybe I bought a collection or I bought a lot of, you know, a pocket of cards off someone, and I know like certain, this friend of mine, like you just said with your military buddy, right? Even when I purchase things, I'm not only just thinking about me, but hey, like so and so would really enjoy that. So if I get this, it's already earmarked for that person, right? And so that's the kind of stuff that pays more dividends than even the probably what the card's worth. The just the thought and the deed itself is worth more than the cardboard in most cases. But it really just sets a nice tone, and it's just positive, right? You just I feel good, I'm not doing it because oh, it looks good. It makes me feel good that I can do it, and I appreciate like the look, whether it's a kid or even not a kid, right? Like you're giving this to me, yeah. That's I thought about you when I got it, so I put it aside, and man, I can't believe you thought about me. Sometimes it's even more than the actual item itself. It's the fact that that person realizes you thought about them when they're not right in front of you, and so that goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't take a lot to be kind to one another. And
Nope.
yeah, I mean, and it honestly, like you said, it's contagious, right? Like people have given me cards to give out to other kids because they see me giving cards to other kids,
Yep.
and it's just that spreads, that positivity spreads, and unfortunately, I think one of the things we do see sometimes is, I mean, the world has negativity in it, um, but I think if you stay positive and keep that outlook and try to just, as my son would say, he learned this from his grandmother, be cool, be kind. So he likes to tell
Yep.
me, um,
Yeah.
just be kind to other people, and just the feeling you get from doing that is worth more than anything monetarily, in my opinion.
Yep. And it is contagious. I've had fellow dealers say, "Hey, hey Newman, I hope you don't mind. I saw what you did. I'm kind of taking a page out of your book. I'm giving out some packs, or I'm giving out some. They put like card packs together, like team bags of
Yep.
with some stars and some. And I'm like, you don't have to like that. Do that. You did. I didn't invent that. Like I got that from someone else did that before me. So just keep that trend going. You don't have to like ask permission to do that. That just and I love to see it, right? And the more we see that, just the hobby becomes a better place for it. Now I know how you got your name, Mean Daddy, but for those listening of Mean Daddy's for like, where did the moniker? How did you come up with the moniker?
Yeah. So it is a fun name. I get asked this fairly often, especially with the logo. So when my son was born, pretty much anytime he cried for any reason, if I was anywhere near him crying, his mother, my wife, would come in and say, "What did Mean Daddy do to you? What did Mean Daddy do to you?" Um, and the name just kind of stuck. It was, it was funny. So that kind of just stuck as the moniker. And I'm paying her back now with our daughter because anytime my daughter cries and she's anywhere near it, she's Mean Mommy. So be on the lookout for that for Mean Mommy also. No,
That
that's how the moniker came up, and the logo. I don't know. My son kind of inspired it, so you know.
Very cool, and unlike the name, right? You're not a mean daddy, and you're a great advocate and ambassador, as we kind of discussed earlier, of the hobby, right? And so, I read this. I believe it was Sports Collectors Daily when I read the piece on you. Or Digest, who I write for. But you're thinking outside the box, and you're trying to do some different stuff with card shows, right? Not everybody enjoys card shows the same way, and as some that listen to this podcast know, uh, I'm a teaching assistant in the special education department. So I work with young men and young women, adults. I'm at the high school level who, have different disabilities, and maybe, they don't like crowd too much crowds make them nervous or uncomfortable, loud noises or too much noise, all different sort of things, and that's just some of it. We could do 2 hours of all the different types of disabilities. So we don't have that much time. But you're doing shows. You're going to do a show that's sort of with people and geared towards kids that have some of these things that we sort of take for granted when we don't have these things, right? We don't realize that others are dealing with this, and what might be easy to do for us may not be easy to do for them. You're thinking about those folks, and it's near. Again, I know I said this before we even start recording. That's near and dear to my heart. So when I read this, and like I believe it's to be the first show that's geared in that direction. Talk about the show, how you came, how this was planned and launched, and kind of the birth of what you're about to do, and I love it, but it's your thing, so I'll let you kind of I know about it from reading about it, but this is your thing, so I'll shut up and let you talk about it.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so the show's called the All-Star Card Show. Um, I started this with my good friend Brett. He owns the Fishtown Card Show in Philadelphia area. There's one Philadelphia, there's one Cherry Hill, New Jersey, one in
Yeah.
Delaware. So we partnered up on this, but yeah. So basically, I had a family reach out to me and said, "Hey, my kid wants to come to a card show, but I'm afraid that it could be overwhelming for him. This and that. He has anxiety, so on and so forth." And I said, "All right, well." How about this? Why don't you guys come out? You guys be my guests. I'll get you guys some tickets. Come out, have some cards. We'll hang out at my table. We'll rip cards, and then hopefully he's feeling good and having fun. He'll want to walk around and do some other stuff. So that all worked out. We had him come out, hung out with him, and it was a great time. And he really enjoyed it. And then after that, we started kind of getting more inquiries about that, and more families. And one thing led to another, and I kind of thought to myself, I noticed like sometimes the kids would get overwhelmed. They'd be looking, the parents were looking for somewhere quiet to take them to kind of calm down a little bit. And I totally get that. Like the card shows can be crazy for sure. So I thought to myself, all right, is there a card show for these families and these kids? And I looked and searched and didn't see anything. I was like, all right, well, I think there should be one. so, so I kind of started with that. Um, and then one thing led to another, and I started to think about, we talked about the financial aspect of how hard it is for anybody to be able to afford some of this stuff. And I said, there's got to be a way where we can put this show on and make it be one less thing that these parents and these kids have to worry about. They can just show up. There'll be cards, there'll be starter kits, boxes for the kids to keep their cards and supplies. Food's going to be free. Everything's going to be free. I just want these kids to be able to come with their families and have a fun night out. And luckily, we've had a really great reception from not only people in the hobby, but outside the hobby that have contributed to this. And we are all together are going to be doing just that, is making a night like this for these kids that hopefully they won't forget, their families won't forget. And, for some of them, it'll be a good introduction to the hobby. Some of them have been in the hobby already. So, it's just, that's the whole thing. I think it's going to be a really, really fun thing all the way around for everybody, from these kids, the families, to me, to the other volunteers. It's going to be a really good time.
I love it. Kudos to you. And think about, someone say, do we need this show? And the answer is an easy yes, right? Because think about maybe how many kids are going to attend, and not just kids, right? Just people, but I know it's geared towards kids, but think about how many people might go to the show that would have never thought about going to a show before for the reasons kind of we discussed, whether it be crowds or the noises, or they just don't feel they feel maybe not like they belong even, and you're that you're designing the show to eliminate a lot of those things that may cause them to not come to a show in the first place. And this it might be in many cases the first show for folks coming to the show, and that hey, you can do this, right? There's avenues to you don't have to just enjoy the hobby, you know, in your room. You can come out. There's ways to enjoy the hobby, even with some of your disabilities and things like that. Um, that you can we can design an event where that shouldn't be an issue anymore, or not like your typical show. And to think outside the box like that. Um, I mean, I think it says a lot about you, Nick, and the people involved, obviously, that are helping out. Kudos to them as well. And I think sometimes we forget about, I think sometimes we think, well, we're all, cookie cutters, we're all the same. And that's so far from the truth. I know that firsthand from what I do. I knew that before that, but even all the more so um, when you're working with those youngsters day in and day out. What might be simple for me and you or somebody else is a big hurdle for them. And I think sometimes, uh, I guess we all can be guilty of taking that for granted occasionally. And here you are, designing an event that's going to, hopefully where those folks can enjoy it like anybody can. And I'm talking, you do talk about some, the difficulties and how does something like that all come together? And when it happens, it's probably going to look seamless, but it's anyone that's done any kind of show or an event, um, it's never as easy as it sometimes looks.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think number one, I mean, couldn't do this without Brett. He has the experience of running shows, and that was a huge because I don't have that experience. So, him being able to help with that type of stuff, and getting the venue, and just all the kind of things that go in behind. There's a million things behind the scenes that go into having a show, and it's different, right? Because most shows you have vendors, and they pay a fee or whatever to come to it and have a table, and I didn't want to do any of that. I wanted to make this solely about the kids in these families, and I wanted to do things unorthodox. Like we talked about having a place to go that's quiet. We're going to have a full sensory room at this show. So if kids need to go to a sensory
Yep.
friendly place, that we have that. We're going to have an education zone with teachers that are also in the hobby. Like yourself, and are going to teach these kids about the hobbies, but they have they have worked with kids with special needs before, so um, yeah, I mean, there's a ton that goes into it. I think the biggest thing is just the outpouring of support from, I mean, too many people to name. Businesses like Children's Hospital of Philadelphia is sponsoring the event. They're one of our sponsors. I mean, it's amazing, just the outpouring of like love and support that we've gotten for this from people. That's been really helpful. People within the community just kind of saying, "Hey, this might be a good idea," or "Hey, I'd like to help and do this. What do you guys think this would be cool with the event?" And just kind of everything kind of just fell into place. Like, believe it or not, it was yeah, a lot of hard work from a lot of people, but it's really falling into place. It's really going to be a group effort, and hopefully start something great.
Yeah, and there's that contagious part of the hobby, right? When you're doing something good, right? There should be, and hopefully it'll be always the case, right? There should be no shortage of people who want to get on board and be part of it, and make it easier, right? The more people involved, the easier it should be. But even that being said, right, to put together the event, you got to have a lot of people sort of rowing in the same direction, if you will, and sometimes that's easier said than done. But I think it's going to be great. Again, kudos to you and everyone involved. And I mean, this is something I read too. Like, this is something you don't want this to be a one-time thing and done. This is something you want to bring to different locales and sort of like gain momentum. And so, no matter where you potentially may live in the country, right? You should maybe this event can be something you can attend. Kind of speak. I know it's early in the process and you're getting this one off the ground, but kind of the big picture or the down the turn down the turnpike view of an event like this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this has all happened pretty quickly, honestly. And I think we're always gonna have things to learn about it. I think we'll learn a lot from the first one. But yeah, we've had interest
Yep.
from all over the country, and honestly, I mean, I don't see why this couldn't be something that's international at some point. Uh, this is this is for
Yep.
others. This is for other people, and this is for people that it's harder. Like you said, it's harder for them to just go to a run of the mill card show on a Saturday. Um, so I hope that we can continue to get support for this cause. And, obviously I'm from Philadelphia, so the first one's in that area. And hopefully we can continue to expand out and more people are interested in being a part of this. And we can try to, touch on as many people and families as we can and spread the hobby to them.
Yeah, I love it. I hope that's the case, Nick. And maybe, we talk about the national, which is coming up here in a couple months, and that's I call it the Super Bowl of the hobby. And obviously, if you're someone that has some of those disabilities, that's an overwhelming event, and just to anybody
Yes.
in many cases, right? But maybe obviously not this year, but maybe in a future year, maybe as soon as 2027, right? Maybe they're starting to expand, right? They're going to the second floor. Maybe they can even dedicate, you know, a certain level or part of that show where if someone's coming in, especially if someone's coming in special needs, even just for the day, where that they can still attend and say they attended the national and partaked in it, where before they maybe like there's no way, you know, Jimmy or Susie can do this kind of event. But maybe that wouldn't be the case if it's something they consider, putting into place and using, your blueprint, if you will, as sort of the or get you involved, maybe even have you work with them to have part of the national sort of be available for people with disabilities who might not be able to go into the main ballroom, if you will, but still want to attend, the show or be in that city. I hope that's something that obviously not this year, but maybe in future nationals, that's something we may see, and not just national. I mentioned the national because it's the granddaddy of them all, as they say. But we're seeing a lot of these regional shows, right? Your East Coast Nationals, your Burbank shows, your Dallas card shows, and others. I don't mean to leave anybody off, but maybe some of these other shows can take a page out of your book or get you involved. Like, how do we bring what you're doing here? How can we offer that, and how can we do it? That way, the show can be for everyone and doesn't have to necessarily, preclude or exclude anybody. Right? I believe the hobby should be inclusive, not exclusive, and hopefully that's maybe we'll be talking, Nick, about your inaugural event just being sort of the precedent to have the hot more inclusion, no matter where the locale or even size of the show.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would love that. Anybody that's, interested in doing something like this, feel free to reach out. I think definitely like the national is the Super Bowl, right? And it's a special thing the first one you go to when you first walk in for the first time.
Yep.
And I think anybody that's in the hobby should experience it. Um, and yeah, I mean I think too, you know, some of these bigger shows especially probably have the infrastructure and staff and team to be able to do something like what you're saying. And
Yep.
yeah, I mean, the like the more the merrier, for lack of a lack of a better
Yep.
cliche, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it'd be awesome if we could get as many people as we can to these types of things, and really whatever level, and the national to your local card show down the street. You know what I mean? So I just want people to experience the hobby the way I got to experience it as a kid, even throughout my adulthood, especially like times in the army. Uh, Opening a box of cards or a couple packs of cards with some buddies was always a good time for me, and sometimes even helped me through some tough times. So I
Yep.
think that you know, that could also have the same effect on others. And you know, if I can help people find that, then let's do it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I'll say this on the air. I'll say this out there. If there's anything I can do, and it's in my power, I'm willing to help. This is near and dear to my heart. I work 5 days a week with young, male and female students that have a lot of these disabilities. It's tough. It's tough. It's stuff that me or you may not think twice about. It's a huge hurdle, and so to think someone that's dealing with that stuff on such a daily basis can still go to an event and enjoy it like everyone else, right? That's so awesome. Even just talking about it, it's awesome to think that that's a what something was not even on their radar is not only going to be on the radar, but something they can partake in. That's a big deal. I don't care, and that should be a big deal whether you know I think if you like again that ambassador and advocate, you should want to see that whether you work with kids, whether you're a parent or a relative, it shouldn't matter. That should be something you endorse and applaud, and I for sure do. And again, you don't have to do that, right? You can say, well, it's this is a big undertaking. Someone else, everyone sometimes has that, right? Someone else would do it, right? But
Yeah.
you're not a someone else would do it. You're like, let's do this, and here you are. So, again, kudos to you and everyone involved. I think it's such a great hobby story, and it's not a hobby story; it's a great human story that just happens to take place in the hobby, right? And I think just so it's so important. We don't really realize it, I think some people do, but it really is important. And you know, kudos to you. We're coming down to term. We're approaching the hour mark here, so I'll give you kind of give out any of the info you want to give out: social media, website, dates, time. No rush. Take your time, Nick. I appreciate you making some time for us. So give out all that info so people can find out more.
Awesome. Well, hey, first and foremost, thank you for having me on here. I appreciate it. Appreciate you giving me an opportunity to talk about me and Daddy and the All Star Card Show. Um, like I said earlier, there's so many people that have contributed to this, and just too many to name. But thank you guys all for everything that you put forth towards this, and it's going to be a special thing, and hopefully it will continue to grow. More people to hear about it, stuff like that. If you want to learn more about the All Star Card Show, we're on Instagram. It's at All Star Card Show. And then for myself, MeanDaddy Cards is at MeanDaddy Cards on Instagram. Those are the two social media platforms we have. I'm working on a YouTube, but been a little busy, so
Yeah.
that's not fully updated yet. But yeah, that's where you can find out more about the show, about myself. Feel free to DM me or the card show. Get back to you as fast as I can. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome stuff, man. I'm not a lip service guy. That's from the heart, right? And I always say, and it wasn't something even the smallest ripples, if we all make them, it becomes a big wave, right? And
Yes, sir.
hopefully that's what's going to happen here. And we're talking about it because it's a precedent setting thing, but maybe we'll be having a conversation in the future where this will just be a normal thing, right? And that's,
Yep.
I think, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm sure that's probably a goal. Like, you like to see this just become um, where no matter where you live, like you said, even international, um, this can be available to you, where maybe you could never, before, where you wouldn't even think about attending, and now that person can, and that's huge. That's huge. That can make somebody's day. That can make someone's month. That can make somebody's life. And not to be dramatic, but I've seen stuff like that on the ground level. So um, it's important. Like I said, when I read about it, I actually talked about it on one of my pods, Nick, and I said I'm going to reach out and see if we can get this gentleman on and shed some more light on it, because it's important. And here we are. So I know you're busy. So thank you for making some time. Whatever you need from me, whether it's whatever, even just talking about it or getting out some dates or pertinent info, don't hesitate. My door will be open all the time to something like this, not just this event, but any future ones as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Appreciate all the kind words. And I guess if I can say one more thing to everybody, go to a
Yep,
card show. Open some packs. Rip some
yep,
packs.
yep. Enjoy the hobby in person, right? It can't be replicated. You know, the hobby's fun in your room and in your house. Don't get me wrong, but in person, it's a whole no, another level, like you just said.
100%.
Thanks, Nick.
All right. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.